Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this Fireside chat. Quick PSA, Mike Bailey, I'm from Passionfruit, and Passionfruit, the platform, provides marketing teams with on-demand access to carefully vetted freelance marketers. So a great way to extend marketing capabilities and have access to the great talent that some teams don't have internally. But enough about Passionfruit. We're here to talk about Beverly and Zillow, so please introduce yourself to the team.
My name is Beverly Jackson, and I'm the Vice President of Brand and Product Marketing for Zillow. And unlike Gino, I don't have a house to give you, so don't ask. But it's exciting to be here because I am a transplant to Las Vegas, and spent 5 years here working on the strip, so this is pretty awesome.
Was the cherry on top, and his rat in the bed.
It's
Comical, literally.
Sound effects. Thank you for that. So today we'll talk about what's happening in the sports marketing industry, a bit about what's happening at Zillow, and of course about your career. But you've been in this space for a while in Vegas. You've worked at MGM. You've seen a lot of changes in the city with sports teams being added to the roster and the UFC becoming a mainstay in Vegas, Formula One. What have you seen in your time at Vegas? What is the evolution that's taken place from a cultural standpoint?
So I'm old enough to remember the big it was the NBA All-Star game here in Vegas back in the early 2000s. And I just remember it was a you-know-what. Like, I can't say this in mixed company, but it was that. Just a fireball and then the poo emoji. It was chaos, right? There was just the city didn't know what to do with that. There were people everywhere, and people came into town, and like the service delivery was not what it was supposed to be, and sports and live sports and the celebrity of sports, everybody at the same time, seemed overwhelming to the city. And I would say the city's done the exact opposite of that now. Like from the beginning of the WNBA to the Raiders, to the beautiful Allegiant Field stadium, to we just heard last night or yesterday that the A's are making their way to Vegas as well. So sports is here to stay. The investment in Formula One in the city, and like despite the minor hiccups that occur, there's something about the level of service delivery, culture, and live sports that were sort of made for Las Vegas. The level of hospitality that can be delivered by this city is unmatched, unparalleled any place else in the world.
Amazing. And I suppose just on that, we've been defining culture in different ways through the last couple of days. How do you define culture from your lens?
So 2 parts, right? Culture is alive. It has a pulse, right? And so it's not just, people will talk about pop culture. So it's not just enough to be sort of like on a trend. Brands that are really savvy about culture don't allow culture to happen to them and react to it. They're actually out front creating culture. That's kind of what I expect and want for the brands that I worked with. It's really interesting. I saw Gino showed his video, and in his video was a reference to the Grammys. And the Hilton Grammy partnership is one that goes back, I think, 25 years or something like that, when Hilton's headquarters was not in McLean, Virginia, not McLean, and it was in Beverly Hills. And that partnership was a really strong one. But my time at the Grammys, we introduced the concept of influencer marketing at the Grammys on behalf of Hilton, because Hilton was one of our premier partners. So to me, it's about pushing the envelope, getting out in front of it, not waiting for you to feel safe. Someone asked a question earlier about like, how do you like push yourself out there? That's what brands need to do. If you are at all interested in anything live, sports, entertainment, any of that, and you expect to attract the attention, be disruptive, increase share of voice for these younger audiences, you can't wait for the culture to come to you. You have to lean into it and be a part of it.
And I suppose on that, culture being a key topic right now, we're talking about sports marketing. How has the marketing industry evolved as sports marketing has developed and influencers have become more prevalent, and as you say, leading with culture? Like, how has that kind of evolved over time in your career, and what have you seen?
So it goes faster, it disappears, and so it happens and it goes away. And so you're constantly, it's not something that you can invest in a season. You have to plan it out with a strategy, and you have to be prepared to invest in it for the long term. Because what happens is if you only jump on it at a moment, you miss it. Like, you just can't get the content out there fast enough. We were talking about the different ways video content is obviously hot, it's everything. But the ways that you think about video content, how you create it, how you get it back into the market, those are all things that you have to think about as a brand that's looking to leverage sports marketing. The other thing that brands have to ultimately do, I don't necessarily consider myself an expert in influencer marketing, but I know a little bit about it, right? And one of the things that you have to be willing to do as a brand is to let go. If you are a brand and you are tightly grasping the reins of what you think is relevant in culture and who you think can talk about your brand, and you're not willing to empower influencers and celebrities to help lead that message, what happens is it crumbles and falls and dies. It becomes inauthentic. It's not credible. Nobody believes you. You're talking out of the side of your neck, and no one will follow you down that road. You have to allow influencers, celebrities, and athletes are in fact influencers. You have to allow them to tell that story with their voice and through their lens.
And I'm curious, how does that work in the Zillow world in terms of controlling the narrative, letting the narrative go, etc.? How do you manage that as a marketing leader, and what do you guide your team on to support or engage or to let go?
So I would say we just launched a new campaign in June, and so we spent a lot of time working on that. It's very data-driven, built on a lot of insights. And one of the big insights or takeaways was that our biggest customer opportunity, not our customer base, our customer opportunity for growth are millennials, right? They're purpose-driven, they're mobile, they're multicultural. They love live sports. And so what we've recognized is that that is a takeaway from us, that we have to embrace that, we have to be willing to celebrate it. And so in that, we recognized two things, that was who our audience was. They love live sports. And the other insight that came from that campaign was that Zillowing is actually a verb, and it's a part of culture. And so those three insights led us to this idea and this concept of like our purpose and mission is to help get more and more people home and help people figure out what they can afford. Because, despite high interest rates and low inventory, people can still afford a home. And they just have to find out what that story is. So we got to go to that audience, we got to find them, go to them, use credible analogies to help tell that story, and then lean into what they already know, which is them sitting at home and Zillowing and trying to dream. So moving them from dreaming to actual realization of getting into a home.
It's an interesting synergy, right? Because sports are raw emotion and passion. Buying a home is emotional and passionate and all that comes with it, right? It's a creative insight.
It's also aspirational, right? So this is not from my Zillow lens. This is from what I know about marketing and brand over the last 30 years. Every basketball player wants to be a rapper, and every rapper wants to be a basketball player. And y'all know who I'm talking about. It's true, right? Remember when Shaq was rapping? So exactly. So it's that idea that it is live, it's passionate, it's raw emotion, and it's also aspirational. Everybody who's a great athlete spends time in the driveway, chucking baskets. They spend time throwing a ball. They spend time running plays. It's so aspirational. You want to be good. You were dreaming. That's your dream phase. And so that's what people do on Zillow. When they talk about Zillowing, people are doing two things. They're looking for their dream house that they can't yet afford, and they're hoping to be able to afford. And what can they afford? And the other thing is they're scoping out, their friends and where they live and how much they pay for their house. Because I know my customer.
And I understand, I read somewhere that inspiration for this campaign came from your own experience when your dream home came to you via the Zillow app. Is that true?
Somebody told you that story. So I used to live in Southern California and decided I didn't want to live in Southern California anymore, and I wanted to move to Las Vegas because I love Vegas. I'm that girl. And but I wanted to build a house. What I realized is that I'm a city girl, and I don't know crap about building a house. I don't know. Like, it's one thing to go to a builder and be like, I'll pick that one. And it's another thing to buy a piece of raw land and then figure out how you're going to get sewage and water and electricity. And that after 2 years of doing that, it became just overwhelming. And I decided to scratch that idea, and I opened up the Zillow app, and I set up my notifications. And I got a notification that a house had gone on the market in a neighborhood that I really wanted to live in. And so I immediately ran with my realtor, and we put a bid on the house, and we got it. And that's exactly how the house came to be.
Love it. And so I suppose just on your campaign and targeting millennials, how is that campaign coming to life through channel strategies and activations? Can you talk the team through how that works?
Sure. I don't think that it's any different from most marketers. A lot of the same things that Gino talked about at Hilton are exactly the same things that we're doing, right? If you're going to target millennial consumers and to some degree Gen Z and then the alpha generation before that, you have to be where they are. And linear TV is just not going to do it. I love a big, beautiful, sweeping commercial the same way everybody else does. I love the idea of it. I love the creation of it. I love all of that. But I also understand the value of a 2-minute TikTok video of someone talking about what is important to them in their home buying journey. I also understand that adulting is hard for some people, and people look to social to help them explain it, figure out, learn. How many times in the last couple of years have you heard somebody say, I either bought it on TikTok or I learned it on TikTok, or I was this many days old before I learned it. And so leaning into that insight and using social in that way with really cool, authentic, native to the platform video, messaging that will resonate, credible, authentic voices, and then allowing those voices to live in the channels holistically without the brands coming in and stepping on them. I was in a meeting earlier this morning with the team. I was actually sitting in the parking lot of one of the casinos and on the call, and the team was presenting something for next year, which we're super excited about, which is the next evolution of our campaign. And someone went to go say something. I was going to say it was my boss, but he's probably listening. But someone went to say something, and my last remarks to the team was, don't let anybody steal the joy of this, right? Because sometimes brand marketers, and I have two parts, right? I have the brand marketing team, so I'm marketing from a brand perspective, and I also have product. And it's really easy to allow people to steal the joy of the campaign. Let the wrong people into the room, invite the wrong people to the meeting, and they will squeeze the life out of anything, right? And suddenly the thing that was fun and cool and hip and sexy becomes like a skirt down to the floor with a high neck ruffle. This is not a good look. Nobody thinks that's
Visual.
I know, I'm just saying.
Interesting. And so I suppose just on the campaign, sports marketing was a key pillar of bringing that to life. I also saw that you as a combination of a collaboration with Disney with the Haunted Mansion, I believe.
Yeah, we did. So we should play the commercial. I have a little video. I should show you the commercial. It's like 30 seconds. But one of the things that was really important to us in this campaign was you took those insights of like focusing on the audience of millennials, recognizing that we were looking for real-time sports as a partnership opportunity, and then making sure that we were leading to the cultural concept of Zillowing as a verb. The other thing that we recognized is in addition to being with sports and aligned to sports, we needed to also be in places where millennials were. And there were just nothing bigger. I mean, I think after the pandemic, everybody wanted to be out and about, and so people have been going to movies more and more, and this was before the strike, obviously. And so we partnered with Disney on the movie The Haunted House because we wanted people to talk about that. But I will also say something about this campaign, in addition to the partnership with Disney and the Haunted House, was it featured the agent. So I run a B2B business and a B2C business because I talk to agents and I talk to consumers. So I need people who sell houses and who actually do the work of selling houses, and I actually need people who are buying houses. What we realized that we needed to do, which we had never done in the history of the company, was like tell a story about our agent partners. And so centering them in the narrative became a huge insight and a takeaway from the campaign, and something we had never done before.
It's amazing. And I suppose just on the point of engaging with agents, you talked about you're also overseeing parts of the product. The super app, or the Zillow super app, the housing super app is something that's a part of your strategy. Can you tell us more about that?
So this thing called the housing super app that we're building. Our founder sort of one day was at a meeting and sort of just, as founders do, they just sort of were like, I'm going to do this thing. And so he threw out aspirationally this concept of building what's called a housing super app. Because if you have never bought a house before, like I talked about building a house from raw land and from the ground and building a road and sewage and electricity and water and stuff, but that's hard. But buying a house is also hard. If you've never done it before, it's really, really hard. It's overwhelming. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of technology. And so Zillow, the app, as a consumer tech tool, can help you solve for some of that. We can make it more transparent. We can democratize access to information. But you might wind up with a really bad agent, not one of ours, but you might wind up with a really bad agent. Or you may not understand what is necessary to get financed. Zillow offers home loans. We can partner you with great agents. We can help you get a tour of a house that you are in love with without having to talk to anybody. Because let's face it, the same way we're leaning into those digital and social channels, it has made it really highly unlikely that people want to pick up the phone and call you and schedule a house tour. What they want to do is do it over the phone. And so building that housing super app is all about us taking out some of the friction and making the process easier. And that's all our focus. That's what the campaign is about. That's all of it.
So sort of moving from just a real estate app to a fintech app as well, I suppose. You're incorporating other parts of services, end-to-end, tailored integration.
You know, I also worked at Twitter before it was X, and I've done some other really challenging things in my career. This is the hardest job I've ever had. Because real estate is super technical and legal. Home loans and mortgages are super technical and legal. And building technology is super technical and legal. And I just want to tell amazing, cool, dope-ass stories that bring people together and help them get to what they want to do. But it is important that I have to string all of that together in the storytelling so that it makes sense to people.
So it's challenging to build an app like that, and you're creating, I suppose, a new category by creating a super app for real estate. There aren't many super apps out there, especially in the States. I mean, we typically look to China and the WeChats of the world. Who do you look to in terms of technology or application as this is a gold standard that we're trying to achieve? And I know I'm putting on the spot here, but...
That was not an approved question. You did not rehearse that. No, seriously. So this is a Beverly answer, not a Zillow answer. I do think that there are several really good examples out there. WeChat is without question one of them. I spent a lot of time in China when I was working for the Grammys, and so I'm a big fan of WeChat and all that it can do. And I remember when WeChat showed up in Las Vegas, and you're able to check in to your hotel and use WeChat as a way to do that, and all the hotels were like super focused on that. WeChat is an example of it. Uber is another example. Uber's a great example of it. I think Instacart is getting closer to that. I like Snap for that. I think Snap is a really cool little super app in a very specific space. There aren't others in my space. That's why we're doing it. We will be the first.
Carving your path, I like it. I suppose on the topic of Snap, how does Zillow utilize various social media like Meta and like Snap to drive awareness amongst your audiences?
So we don't use Snap just yet. We're working on it. We're trying to figure out the best way to do it, right? We do a lot of really interesting technology and integration into what we work on with this tool that we use for agents called ShowingTime Plus, which is all about 3D touring and like real-time mapping in the house and situational awareness in the house so that when you drop a pin, you actually know where you are and the pictures are in 4 and 8K and it's in the app and you can figure out from a tour perspective of what you're actually looking at before you leave your couch, right? Bringing you out of that sort of dreaming state. When you think about, so we're the largest real estate app website in the world. 240 million people come to our app every day. 50% of them come unaided. They just come, 80% come unaided. 50% of the people who start their home buying process start that process on Zillow. So every one of the tools and resources has to be something that makes sense for the technology and where they are. I'm excited to see what we do with Snap, but right now we're focused on TikTok Live.
Thanks. We've just been given the call for 5 minutes, but would love to dig into, you've been in an industry that's predominantly been dominated by males for a long time. How did you find it, we've pivoted to talking about your career, not Zillow, how did you find, developing your own voice and what sort of steps did you go through to really, I suppose, build confidence in that space?
So I am generally not someone who lacks confidence, but having an opportunity to do good work over and over and over again builds a resume and a body of work that I'm confident in, whether it's the work that I did at Tribune Interactive or the Grammys or Twitter or Activision or here at MGM. I have this body of work that I'm super proud of, and so I don't spend a lot of time going, hi, have you met me? Let me tell you about the cool shit I've done. I look at what is the next cool thing I can do, right? That gets you in the door, but what keeps you in the door is being able to continually deliver against those big objectives aspirational things that allow you to talk to your customers in authentic ways. And some of my best partners, mentors, combatants have been white dudes, so it's okay. I'll get it. Y'all didn't hear that. That was the first part of the question he asked, so I didn't just make that up and start attacking white guys. He said, as a black woman in a world that is dominated by white men, how have you been able to maintain your confidence? That was what had these people thinking about taking shots at white guys.
Sorry about that. I suppose we've got a couple of minutes for questions. We'd love to open up to the floor if anyone has a question.
From a white guy. Oh.
My name's Randy Boynton. I'm with Dignity Health. Beverly's my friend, so we're playing around a little bit. You referenced Zillowing. I'm like a lightweight champ of Zillowing. I can spend hours looking at $50 million beach houses I can't afford. How many people are like me? Like, how much time on site do people spend? Because I honestly can spend 2 hours looking at stuff I can never afford. And there's its part two. You know, on TikTok, there's literally people who make fun of the horrible photos on Zillow. Like, are you engaging them at all? How does that work? Just kind of curious.
So I'm going to answer your first question last. The act of looking at those wacky houses that you're talking about is a website. That's not even a website. It's a social site. It's called Zillow Gone Wild, which is really interesting. We love them and what they're doing, the guy who runs it. But it is an unofficial relationship with us. But it is one of those moments in pop culture that if you're really smart and savvy, you might be able to do something with. But like everybody is fascinated by those. But there are also people on TikTok who help you understand how to afford a house. And you've seen that guy that like stops people in the corner and goes, how much does your house cost? I'd like to go in and jump on your bed. Not happening in my house, but good luck with you. Good on you. The other one is that, so 240 million people come to the site every month, right? About 40 minutes is spent on each visit. Like people come and they stay. So it's our job to make sure that when you get there, from the products marketing part of my job, is that I'm pulling you through on a journey that gets you to the thing you actually want. In addition to your $50 million beach house. Maybe it's like a $250,000 beach with a view if you made out the bathroom window. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, Beverly.